Hey guys, it's Ray, and today's video is all about the windows. Window tint to keep the heat out, window shades to keep the light out, and window screens to keep the bugs out. First, let's talk about tint. I paid to have all of my windows tinted, including the windshield, with a high-end nano ceramic tint. I did a lot of research, and this tint is just about the best at blocking UV rays and keeping the heat out. On average, it keeps the temperature inside the van about 15 degrees cooler. It is pricey. I paid about $1,000, but for me it's worth the investment to stay cooler in the summer months. Be sure to check the laws in your state because the legal percentages allowed, basically how dark the tint can be, and the color of the tint allowed varies widely and is altogether illegal in some states. You also have restrictions on tint reflectivity. Reflective film works like a two-way mirror when the light outside is brighter than the light inside. You can see out, but to those on the outside, your window looks like a mirror. And to complicate matters, when you're traveling in a state with different laws, you might get pulled over by police and be subject to fines. So keep that in mind. In Texas, for example, you can tint the top 5 inches of your windshield and the front side windows up to 25%. The back side windows can be as dark as you want, and the rear window can be as dark as you want if you have dual side mirrors. If you don't have 2 side mirrors, you can only tint your rear window up to 25%. And finally, red, amber, and blue colored tints are not allowed. Check out Tint Wiz for a full breakdown of window tint laws and legal tint percentages state by state. I'll put a link in the description. I mentioned that my windshield was tinted. I have 25% tint on the top and a clear UV film covering the glass below that. The UV film provides sun protection, but no privacy. So I also use a folding sunscreen. It cuts down on heat and it keeps the light out at night. These Covercraft brand screens are custom made for your specific car, and they're kind of pricey, but they're super sturdy and very well made. I cut a square notch out of one of the panels so it could fit around my dash cam. Okay, the tint keeps the heat out, but what about privacy? For privacy at night, I made these window shades, and I started with a shower curtain that I cut and I spray glued onto Reflectix for insulation, and then I also glued it to Coroplast in the back, and I put black gaffer's tape to hold it around the edges, and I have a tab right here to pull it out. But when you go to shove it in this window, it is so tight, it really takes a little bit of muscle. You bend it in, it's gonna go, I promise. And then you push it in. But once it is in, it does not come out. It doesn't let any light in. If you find this video interesting, please like it and subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, now let's look at how I created the window shades. Here's what I used. Reflectix, also known as double reflective insulation, any fabric or a fabric shower curtain, some spray adhesive, black gaffer's tape, packing paper or even copy paper, scissors, an X-Acto or utility knife, a ballpoint and a Sharpie pen, Scotch tape, and finally Coroplast, also known as corrugated plastic. Coroplast sheets are optional, but this is what provides rigidity. I wanted the shades to stay in place and not get floppy over time. The trade-off is that it takes more space to store them. You can't fold these or roll them up. First, we need to make a template for each window, and for that you can use packing paper, these larger sheets like this, or just plain copy paper and Scotch tape. I start out and do it in the center. A quick tip, when taping to your windows, make sure only a tiny bit of the tape is touching the window. If you put too much tape, it'll be hard to pull the template off the window in one piece. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to cover the window, so let's speed this up. Start along the bottom edge of the window, taping each piece of paper on the top and sides. It's okay to overlap the pages as much as you need, just keep adding tape to keep them together. When you get to the edge, run your fingers along the inner edge of the window to make a crease, and tape the edge piece to the door trim. Add paper to the other side until you finish the row, then start another row, remembering to overlap each piece of paper. If you have a small gap somewhere, that's okay, just leave it. We're mainly concerned about the outer edges. With the basic template done, add more tape to all the overlapping paper edges. This will help hold it together when we pull it off. Now get a ballpoint pen, not a Sharpie. Trace around the inner edge of the window. It helps to run your fingers back and forth to form a crease before drawing. Next, slowly peel the template off the window, starting at the outer edges. Be careful that the paper doesn't pull apart. So now we have the template, we just have to cut it out. Coming up, we finish the custom shade and we find a quick fix for bug screens. But first, I want to take a quick minute to tell you about a brand new free mobile app I created called Easy Watts. It helps you plan how to run all your devices without running your battery down. Here's a preview.
Whether you're camping, living the van life, or just trying to get through a power outage, Easy Watts helps you know how much portable power you need, what appliances you can use, and for how long. Here's how it works. Select a power station from popular brands like Blue Eddy, EcoFlow, Goal Zero, or Jackery. Then enter the devices and appliances you want to run. Here we're using a 12-volt fridge, a water kettle, a USB fan, an air fryer, and a microwave. And finally, set the battery percentage to match the current state of charge of the battery on your power station. Ours is set to 90%. Easy Watts shows you the runtime for your active devices. If you turn devices on and off, or change the time a device will be in use, the runtime also changes, giving you a better estimate of how long everything will last. Don't wing it. Get the mobile app that takes the guesswork out of using appliances off-grid. Easy Watts, free for iPhone and Android. To learn more, visit easywatts.net or tap the link in the description below.
Okay, now back to the demo. Place the template on a flat surface and cut along the line you drew, and voila, you have your first template. And the good news is that you only need a template for the windows on one side of your car. That's because your driver's side and passenger side windows are exact opposites of each other. So each template is an exact match for the opposite side if you just flip it. The next step is to cut our coroplast layers. Place the template you just made onto a sheet of coroplast and trace around it using a Sharpie pen. If you have black coroplast and a black Sharpie, it can be hard to see the line you've drawn. Try adjusting the light in the room or using a different color pen. Next, cut the coroplast to size using an X-Acto knife or a thin blade utility knife. It might be hard to cut using scissors. Next, we're going to test fit it in the window, but before we do, we need to attach some gaffer's tape to make a temporary tab. Cut a piece of gaffer's tape about 10 inches long and attach it to one of the top corners of the coroplast like this. Fold it over on itself and seal it together. This gives us a tab to pull the shade out of the window if it's too tight. Test fit it in your window. If it fits snugly in place, awesome. If it's too big, just trim it down a little bit at a time until it fits. After testing, carefully remove or cut off the temporary gaffer's tape tab. Now we need to use this coroplast piece to create another one. Place a new section of coroplast under the one you just made and trace around it using the Sharpie pen. Then cut it to size. Next, place some Reflectix under either one of the coroplast pieces you just cut and trace around it using a Sharpie pen. Cut the Reflectix to size. Now repeat this step and cut another piece of Reflectix the same size. You should now have 2 layers of Reflectix and 2 layers of coroplast cut to roughly the same size. Place both pieces of Reflectix on a flat surface, making sure the pieces are facing opposite directions, like this. These will be the sides visible to you inside. Now lay fabric over each Reflectix layer, being mindful to position the fabric pattern as you see fit. Cut the fabric just a few inches wider than the Reflectix on all sides. For this next part, move outside to a well-ventilated area and place your fabric face down on a flat surface like this table. For best results, stretch and smooth it out and clamp it at the edges to keep it in place. Now spray a generous amount of adhesive to one side of Reflectix. I did this in the grass to avoid getting glue on the table. Take the Reflectix and slowly lower it into position on the fabric. Press down in the center and apply pressure in an outward direction until you've reached the edge. Repeat in every direction to prevent wrinkles. Now flip the piece over and cut the edges. You only need about an inch or 2 overhang. It's okay if you cut it pretty close like I did here. This will be covered later. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. I put the template in the grass again and sprayed about 2 to 3 inches of adhesive all around the Reflectix. Try not to get spray on the fabric, but it's okay if you do. Move back to the work surface, slowly pull and fold the fabric over and apply pressure to glue it down. Work all the way around until all the fabric has been folded. Don't worry about wrinkles on this side, it'll be hidden. Take scissors and cut excess fabric at the corners. Next, spray a generous amount of adhesive to your coroplast layer. Cover it completely. Back on the work surface, place the coroplast on top of the Reflectix fabric layer and apply pressure all over to bond them together. Smooth your hands across while putting your weight into it. Flip it over and continue smoothing it out. Repeat these steps for each window shade, and for best results, let them cure overnight. The next step is to create a finishing trim around each shade using gaffer's tape. I start with the longest straight surface, usually the bottom, and I tear a piece of tape about the same length. Place the tape onto the fabric side so that the outer edges line up about halfway on the tape. Put pressure to smooth the tape out, avoiding wrinkles. Next, flip the shade over and pull the tape firmly to the other side and tape it to the coroplast. Again, applying pressure to smooth the tape out. Now repeat this process for the remaining exposed edges of the shade. On the corners, tape one side first, then overlap that first piece with another piece of tape. The trim doesn't need to be perfect or perfectly straight. I added an extra piece of tape here because I thought it would look a little better, even though it wasn't needed. This tape trim is only here to keep the layers from separating and to give them a polished look. The final step is to create a pull tab using gaffer's tape. The shades are designed to fit snugly in the window, so we need tabs to make it easier to pull them out. It's basically the same process as the one we made before. Attach a piece of tape about 8 to 10 inches long to the top back edge of one side. Fold it over onto itself and smooth it out. Then add a second tape layer on top of the first one. And finally, take about a 6-inch piece of tape and tear it in half. Place one piece on each side over the base of the tab you just made. Smooth it out, give it a tug, and that's it. You have just completed a DIY window shade. I created shades for 4 of my side windows, but I didn't create one for the big back window yet. I'm still figuring it out. The coroplast and Reflectix isn't big enough to do it in one piece, and if I do it in 2 pieces, I'm not sure how to keep them in place. I may need to create a center brace or something similar. Anyway, that's for another day. Time now for window screens. Window screens were one of the last things I did on this build, and I really wanted a DIY solution. I measured all the windows, cut some patio door screen, and I was looking for magnets and materials to sew around the edges, but honestly, I was kind of burned out at the time. Then a friend suggested I buy pre-made screens, the kind you slide over the window frame, then close the door. Those would fit my front driver and passenger side doors, but I already made window shades for those windows, and they form an airtight fit. These were a no-go. I wanted the screens on my sliding doors because I already have a fan mounted by one of my windows, so that's where I needed the ventilation. And those pullover screens aren't designed to work on a wide sliding door. So with my window measurements in hand, I started searching online for magnetic window screens in hopes of finding pre-made ones that would be large enough to fit my sliding door windows. And as luck would have it, I found a match. These $16 sunroof screens were a perfect fit for my side windows. They fold up really small and they're super easy to put up and take off. They have a thin magnetic strip sewn into the edges and they stick to the metal on my car just fine, but I bought some rubber-coated magnets to put in the corners just to be sure they stay in place on windy days. I added eye bolts to them so I'd have an easy way to pull the magnets off. I really dreaded this and kept putting it off, but it turned out to be one of the easiest parts of the whole build. You never know. If you have questions or suggestions, please leave a comment. That's it for this video. As always, thanks for watching.